Importantly, the audience has to be very clear. The reader has to know, oh, Caris is a smart guy, or Caris is a smart guy but gullible, or Caris is not a smart guy. Caris is kind of an idiot. So that's my question. Who is he in your mind? And then how do we convey that better? Next up, we have Ariel. So Ariel, so this is your second novel with us and with you. So we're working on our MCS. What I particularly like is I ask you guys to write notes when you submit a selection for us on your reflections on how the work's going. And Ariel put that she rewrote it 4 different times, and this one feels like the best fit for where the story is headed. Exactly what a good craft novelist person should be doing. Thinking about different ways of telling the story, going as far as necessary to test them out, either testing them out at your MCS, actually writing a chunk of it, and then figuring out what's going to work best at this point in the story. Great. Fantastic. Compliments. Finger snaps, I guess, is what we've been doing lately. So, but when you're ready to proceed, I'd like you to do your MCS.
Oh man, are you ready for this? This MCS that needs so much work. It's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. Okay, let's try. Once upon a time, there was a magical warrior named Caris who doesn't like to kill in fear of becoming a monstrous person like his father. One day, he chooses to not kill actual monsters in this forest that he's supposed to be doing that. And by letting these monsters go free, they end up hurting his people and injuring one of his really good friends and comrades. Because he failed to protect, he's given the choice, because he's had such a great track record, he's given the choice. He can either retire his sword and live a normal life, or he can be deployed to an allied kingdom to make amends for his mistake and become the warrior his father once was. Filled by guilt and remorse of what happened to the people and his friend who was injured, he decides to go to the deployment, and he's going to become a Denami who can kill to make amends for that. On his journey to this deployment, he has to fend for himself, and when he kills an animal to feed himself, he immediately is filled with regret, can't do it, but he makes it to Vutrar, and covered in blood, they are immediately hesitant as to who this magical warrior is, and they imprison him. He is interrogated by the king of this kingdom he was deployed to, called Vutrar, and the king interrogates as to whether he's the one who just killed his younger brother who went missing. In order to prove his innocence, Caris tries to help this king and kingdom by figuring out a mystery that there's a monster loose in their kingdom. In all these events of trying to figure out where this monster is, Caris and the king start to fall in love, and Caris discovers it is the king who's actually the monster who's been turning into one. Desperate to try and stop the king from turning into this monster, Caris tries to cover up and tries to figure out what's going on, but he ends up getting discovered. Their romance is discovered by the friend who originally Caris had injured. And this is where my MCS goes a little bit off track. I'm not totally sure exactly how this is going to end. I just know there's going to be a big fight sequence at the end where Caris chooses to protect the king who's a monster, because his friend is actually choosing to be a monster in this situation, whereas the king is trying to make better choices. So he has to kill his friend to save his lover, and then that's how the story ends. Ta-da!
Great.
No.
Oh, and sorry, Justin, I meant to give you fireworks too. You get fireworks for completeness and drama. It's good, Ariel. 2 quick comments. You guys will notice that this was very front-loaded. Why? Because it's still in development. So she spent a lot of time talking about the beginning and the inciting incident, and then the back is TBD. Perfectly fine. And then second, the other thing that overlays with this is the beginning was much more dramatic, right? Ariel's happy with the beginning. She's settled on it. Now she's working on the middle, and then she'll work on the end. And it doesn't mean she has to work on them linearly, right? She can work on the end and then go back to work out the middle. But the beginning is well set, so great. So completeness, I think we answered that question. We still need an end. Then we'll go back and try to figure out what the middle is, or vice versa. I had one question. Does anyone else have any questions for Ariel before I ask mine? Shaking head. Justin, do you have a question? Nope. All right. So the only question I have is I might mention Vol. So Vol is the person who got injured in the beginning and then comes back at the end. And because they're playing a role twice in the MCS, it's okay for them to be a named character. And then you didn't name the king, at least I might have missed it. So you might want to name them too. So my question is named character versus not named character. So let's be clear on this for everyone. A named character in the MCS is a main character, period. If someone is not named in the MCS, chances are they aren't a main character. And then that has a whole range of consequences, not spending too much time on them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Main characters need to be fully developed. And my question then, Ariel, is who are the main characters right now?
The main characters are Caris, King Tosh, and Bull.
Good. So that's exactly as we expected. So then we're going to need to develop them, which raises a point we'll get to a little bit later in the show. Justin, are you with us? Because you're about to lead comments. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
Sorry about that, y'all. Okay, well, Ariel, I think the refresher on your MCS has also changed some of my comments, because I think the last time that I at least visited this world, a lot of things were different. So for me, I took things a little bit differently, but I think that they fit more in with what you're trying to do. My main comment was, first of all, I just want to start out by saying, I say this every week, but why not? Like, everyone, it feels good to get. You got great descriptors. You're awesome at that. Like, it's just like everything that you describe, I'm very jealous of. The way that you describe it is fantastic. I wanted to say the main thing that for me was, and I'm like, it's all about like the how things work for me in world. And so for the Orodite stuff in this particular chapter, that was the main thing that kind of stuck out with me. And what I wrote down was that his struggle to not necessarily use it originally when he's like thinking about using it. He's like, if I don't use it, then I'll probably die out here because I'm, fading from exhaustion and everything like that. Like, I need to use it to kill. But the fact that he uses it and ends up at the place anyway, it made me feel like the choice wasn't as weighty as I was necessarily wanting it to be. I don't really know what the fix on that is. It just like the fact that he used it, killed, and then just the fact that he made it there anyway. I know part of the reason why he uses it to say, like, if I'm going to make it there, I need to live, and if I need to live, I need to get food, right? But like the fact that he makes it there anyway, I don't know if it's just even mentioning the fact that like he's not familiar with the land, so he's not really sure how far he is away, like anything in there to just kind of make it that using it to get there quickly is not necessarily on his mind, right? Because like for me, that was the main thing, was like, if that was always an option, that seems like the first thing that you would do. But also your change in this now that he is, because I know originally, like, there was this struggle of not wanting to kill. And now it's like this person who feels like he needs to learn how to become a killer to prove himself worthy of something is definitely fits in with his killing of the deer and then not being able to really like, you know, follow through with it. Or it fits more in with what you're going for now. I had written it down as originally as feeling like that didn't quite go with the character that, you know, I had read in other chapters. But with what you're going with now, I think that that fits in. The main thing was just the use of Orodite for me, figuring out exactly what its reaches are and what its boundaries are, and then, you know, holding the character and the circumstances to that. That was the main thing for me.
Good. Thank you, Justin. Very good comments. Kim.
Okay, so I love this internal conflict that Caris is constantly going through between wanting to atone for getting Vol horribly injured, but struggling with allowing that answer to be violence. And then also I feel like it gets even deeper because I love that Caris feels like a coward for hiding behind closed doors while his mom suffered abuse from his dad. But the solution to be stronger is to use the very thing that made his dad that monster. Like, it's just so great, like this conflict and everything. And I'm just loving it so much. I did have some minor magic system questions along with what Justin was talking about. Mine too is I don't quite understand, like, how do they know their Orodite is running low? Like, is it just like a fading glow, like kind of thing? Like, and it doesn't sound like it's a stone that they can, like, it runs out is what it sounds like to me. So I'm just kind of curious, like, is it a one and done thing? How does it get replenished? Like, just that kind of stuff, like, especially when it's like running low. I just kind of want to get a better handle on that magic system. And then I know I wasn't at the last, I read through the previous chapter real quick to kind of catch up. I'm still a little confused on what's going on in that beginning of this chapter with Captain Llewellyn appearing to give Caris another chance. Because in the previous chapter, he sounded dead set on basically being like, you're a POS and you should be executed. And then it looks like he's getting the second chance kind of thing. Like, I just was really confused. And maybe it's supposed to be fishy, but I think if that's the case, then we need to kind of see Caris's wheels turning on that, being like, this is weird. I thought he would never have given me a second chance, but it looks like he did. So I guess I'll go with this, just to kind of like show the reader that you're probably confused here, but you're supposed to be confused here. Like, does that make sense? Because like I said, the more I was reading it, I'm like, this does sound really fishy, but I feel like I need Caris to see that it's fishy for me to be okay with it being fishy, if that like makes sense at all. I hope it does. But that, yeah, the biggest thing I tripped over was just that beginning part. Like, I didn't quite understand what Captain Llewellyn's motives were, what was going on. But other than that, it was great. So that is all I have.
Good. Thank you, Kim. So let's acknowledge the great part. It's very immersive, right? The descriptions, as Justin said, and the conflict are very well set up. And it's written well, which is hard to do, right? You set up the conflict, you set up the plot points, and then you have to write them so that the reader understands them. So you win on that level. But here's how people read. They sort of read a chapter, they enjoy it, and then they reflect on it a bit. You can't control when they reflect, but at some point, most readers are going to reflect. And that's when the plot becomes important. Do these things hang together? And then they think more about the characters. So I was trying to think of a question that would unite what Justin said with what Kim said. And I'm going to ask this reader poll question first, and then I'll ask you, Ariel. The question is, how smart is Caris? So Kim, you go first. How smart is Caris on a scale of 1 to 10, say?
I'm trying to think because I feel like there's two different answers I can, like, there's emotionally and then there's like tactively, like, you know, like army wise.
Good. Say more. You're on the right
I
It's
feel like
dovetailing with what I'm thinking.
emotionally wise, he's very this is tough. Like he's empathetic, but I don't feel like he's, I don't know. Is he too trusting, maybe? I don't know. Or too hard on himself?
What about his raw intelligence, like figuring out what's going on in the world around him and acting accordingly?
I don't think he's super into, like, I would put him at mid, like 5 or 6 in the middle.
All right, so Caris, according to this estimate, is of mid-intelligence.
Yeah.
Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just based on what we read so far, I would say that I think I was with you, Kim. I feel like trusting's on the right path. I don't know what the right word is. It's not, I don't want to say gullible, but I feel like he is somewhere along those lines of like, maybe like tactically he is brilliant because he has focused a lot of his life on becoming that. But I do feel like he fails to see malice in people a lot. And but I can't quite put my finger on that. It just whether that's intentional or not. It feels like whether he wants to see the best in people or he just simply doesn't have like the ability to see the worst in people. I don't quite know.
Good. All right. So gullible and mid. So here's what prompted me to ask that. He wakes up alone, discovers he has a dagger. First, I mean, where does his mind go, right? Reasonably intelligent. So this guy's supposed to be a super soldier. Now there's sort of intelligent super soldiers, and then there's idiotic super soldiers. So you have Captain America versus someone else, Hulk, right? Not too bright. My guess is in this universe, a super soldier should be pretty smart. Now, it's my guess because that's how my brain is filling in the story based on the chapters I read. So it's more than a guess, it's an expectation. So when Caris wakes up and he's alone, it's a setup, right? The Captain Llewellyn has set him up twice now. He set him up in the last chapter because he intervened in this sort of mock combat. And then in this chapter, he set him up because he took away all of his clothes, food, and left him with a dagger and a somewhat depowered orodite stone, which, as Kim brought up, it's kind of important to try to figure out what the gas gauge on an orodite stone looks like. So that's the question, right? And so you have to answer this question, Ariel. I'm going to ask for an answer in a second. But more importantly, the audience has to be very clear. The reader has to know, oh, Caris is a smart guy. Or Caris is a smart guy, but gullible. Or Caris is not a smart guy. Caris is kind of an idiot. So that's my question. Who is he in your mind? And then how do we convey that better?
Caris is not the brightest tool in the shed. He's got a lot of raw talent, but he's not too like, yeah. Like I think in like D&D like ways of like making him a character sheet, and he's like a paladin, so his intelligence isn't like super high. His wisdom's high, but it's like his intelligence pretty low. And it's like through this story he develops more competence. So he starts out a bit low in competence. Is the idea right now.
What do you guys think? It seems that's really hard to write because you're screaming at Caris, this is a setup. Don't trust this situation. Don't trust this guy. Don't do this. What do you guys think? Kim, you're sort of nodding a bit.
Yeah, I just feel like for him being in the military, he would just like I said, I don't think he needs to like completely pick up on things, but I feel like I said, he would be like, this seems fishy, but I'll go with it. Like that I don't know, but like he almost, for him to just be like, oh, Llewellyn clearly cares about me here. I'm like, really, dude? Like, I don't like see it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's just kind of how I felt about him. So
Justin?
Ariel, I think honestly, if you're gonna use like a D&D way of looking at it, I think you might need to flip it because the way that we're looking at it right now, like I think he's got much more book smarts than street smarts. Like he's got
Mm.
like this kind of like he's got the
True.
intelligence of like tactics, right? Like things that make sense to him are things that he learned, right? But like when it comes to people around him and situations, like he seems to not be able to comprehend exactly people's intentions and things like that. And so I feel like it's actually like the opposite.
That
Like
makes sense. Yeah.
he's learned he does really well in a structured environment like the military, and he's learned a lot of things because it's been taught to him. But like when it comes to like things that he's supposed to have learned on his own, or like, you know, just things that the world is supposed to have taught him, it seems like he kind of lacks in being able to identify those types of situations. So I also do that a lot of times, is I'll use the D&D kind of method on certain things. But I think that for the character that you're trying to build, you might want to try and like swap those two.
That makes sense.
The good news is you were trying to make him look stupid in a sense. And he did. He looked really stupid. So the story question is he too stupid to move the story along? Or another way of putting that is, will the reader find this particular character in this situation compelling? So we're left, as Kim said, you know, think, right? Use your brain. Justin gives a sort of an alibi for him. I don't know if it's enough. And there's two. So the one issue is how he wakes up in this bad situation, which is clearly constructed. So there's two sort of sub issues that raises. Who is Captain Llewellyn, right? Why does he throw Caris in this situation? So not only do we need to know Caris's reason in his head at the time, but the story has to, you, the author, have to have a story reason. I'm sure you do, right? But I can't see it as a reader. And then the second issue is he gets to teleport to the next step in his destination, which it seems like he should have figured that out a lot earlier in the story. Or alternatively, right, I don't know, the ending was just confusing. So the way we address that is, can you say the chapter in a sentence to us, Ariel, please?
Uh no.
No.
My brain
All right.
was short-circuited.
Fair enough. So that's a no. So then, all right. So that's it, right? So think about, what is the focus of this chapter? There's some kind of test of Caris that's set up by Llewellyn, and then there's some kind of out. And then I'm guessing Caris either passes or fails the test. I think he passed, maybe, because he killed the deer, or he didn't kill the deer. So just put a little bit of thought into this. I think the key to unraveling this is really Caris's identity. Kim is right. The conflict is really interesting. The problem is Caris in his current intelligence level isn't equipped to deal with a conflict of this nature, as his main response will be duh, as opposed to actually reasoning this through and trying to figure out the kind of test Llewellyn has posed for him. I mean, the good news is you executed, and the execution was well written. And then, so now the best news is you just try to think a little bit more about who Caris is, and then you can write this ordeal. So this is clearly an ordeal, right? You're nodding. So think a little bit more about how the ordeal is set up. And then the interesting thing is how Caris reacts to an ordeal, because presumably he's being observed, whether directly or indirectly. So you get sort of a Star Trek situation where the aliens are watching the human behave, or in this case, a military situation where the superiors are watching a subordinate, a soldier with questionable loyalty, right? The question is, will Caris do his duty as a warrior, as a dynami, right, which are your super soldiers? And then how aware of that is Caris? And at this point, his awareness seems to be 0. So that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, does anyone else have any comments for Ariel? All right, Ariel, thoughts?
Thank you all for sharing about Caris's intelligence. That was very helpful. I have been like struggling a lot in general with his like identity. I feel like I still kind of like flip-flop on some things. I know, yeah, I like know the conflict. I know what I want him to be and like who he is and like of Blood and Stone, but it's very different being in his head and figuring out how this all works here. So yeah, it's really helpful to think about upping like his intelligence and playing around with it. I think that will be really, really helpful. And that's really helpful to hear about the magic questions, because in my head, like it's a lot of like the, you know, how do you know an Oradite is powered up? Like, you know, how does it get replenished? That's like all said in my other books. So I like, it's helpful to hear because I just forget. I haven't shared that side of things. And yeah, all the other, all the crits are so helpful, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good. Great, Ariel. And just a quick reminder, you can look back at your first novel, Blood and Stone, sort of deconstruct Caris using the character equation, parts of you, universals like stereotypes and archetypes, reference, people you know that you've stolen from, and see what direction you have to go in. So reference is what we need here, maybe a little bit of archetype. So you mentioned Paladin. I mean, that raises the sort of Dungeons and Dragons questions. How smart are Paladins, right? It strikes, if I remember correctly, Paladins are pretty smart, or at least they're not complete morons. So, and think about, who does he resemble? A Greek hero, Achilles, headstrong, but great warrior, but headstrong, more stupid warrior, I can't think of any offhand, etc. Right? And then build him, because that's going to allow the story to come through, I think. All right. Great job today.
Bardsy delivers the tools, guidance, and support you need to produce compelling novels. Our well-researched and thoroughly tested approach includes our minimum complete story, a 90-second exercise that keeps your writing on track while fueling creativity. Bardsy Publishability Index, a 23-dimension checklist that offers attainable goals and provides actionable feedback. And our brand new comprehensive character developer that helps you construct unforgettable characters. Come see for yourself at Bardsy.com today. Try our workshop or enter our first chapter contest. Then, when you're ready, Elite Membership delivers writing groups, personal coaching, and a curated community. With Bardsy, your work will captivate everyone, from agents to publishers, and, most importantly, your readers.